Hi, and welcome to Hacking TV. This week, Steve tells us all the ways his mind was blown at TED in Vancouver.
Also, Yahoo bails out of original video programming, raising the question, what's the future of its global anchor, Katie Couric?
And AT&T pulls back from Uverse, ending the era of TV over copper wires. I'm Saul Hansel.
And I'm Steve Rosenbaum, and this is Hacking TV.
So it's a week for reality. And I'm not talking about Jeb Bush and his late understanding of his lack of presidential prospects, but we're talking about augmented reality, virtual reality, and that ever-strange TED reality. Steve, what was it like in Vancouver, and what did you see?
So, this is my 12th year at TED, and every year has a slightly different composition of cynicism, optimism, vision, passion, fear, wonder. And I've come to understand that part of that is what you bring to it. So if you come to TED, kind of cynical and tired, then you can be overwhelmed. I came to TED this year in particular, but almost always, quite optimistic, and came away having seen some really terrific things, and some of which I'll share with you on the show today. But it was, it's a week. I don't do any, it's the only thing I do for a week in my life, other than occasionally go on vacation.
So there was all sorts of stuff. Al Gore said the global warming isn't warming quite as much as people might be worrying. There were presumably the usual epidemiologists and roboticists and and who is the fancy rock and roller or the musical guest?
John Legend.
Okay.
By the way, Al Gore did this, just so that we don't leave this unanswered. He didn't actually say things were getting better. He basically laid out a whole series of data that was actually quite troubling and kind of grim, but then ended with an optimistic, but we can solve this, and kind of had a rah-rah moment where there were some things going in the right direction. But I wouldn't want you to believe that He said we've turned the corner on global warming. Far from it.
Okay. But one of the big themes was stuff you have to put glasses on for, augmented and virtual reality. And one of the most impressive, you've said, is an outfit called Meta. Tell me what they do and, what's so special about it.
All right, so let's start by differentiating between virtual reality and augmented reality.
Okay.
Virtual reality, you put on a pair of glasses that seal you off from the world, and you are in a fully immersive three-dimensional world, but you're not seeing anything outside that is the real world. You're just seeing this virtual world. Augmented reality is wearing not glasses, but what is essentially a clear monitor that wraps around the front of your face, but it's translucent. So if you and I were wearing, Meta glasses now, we would see each other in the real world, but things would appear virtually that would live on top of the real world.
It's sort of virtual psychosis. Anyway, so when you, and you're going to show us some video of this, but when you put on the glasses, what did you see in addition to the real world, and why would anybody want to do this?
So let's start by talking about life today. Most of us sit in front of screens for big portions of our day.
Yep.
Whether you call a mobile phone a screen or a computer a screen or a television a screen, they're all versions of a square thing with light emitting diodes and some kind of an interface, either a mouse or your finger on the phone. And basically, Moran, who is the CEO of Meta, his basic thesis is that's a terrible interface. It's flat, it's one-dimensional. So we've got all this information in the world that is now at our fingertips, and we're looking at it in this very boxy, flat, uninteresting way.
Okay.
So everything inside the Meta glasses world is holograms, three-dimensional holograms.
And so, but the idea is this is an interface for computing. So instead of surfing the web or doing your PowerPoint or watching your YouTube or whatever it is that you do on your computer or your phone or your TV, you will use these things and you will be able to do what that makes it a better interface.
So imagine an architect and a client sitting up on different parts of the world, both wearing Meta glasses and looking at a three-dimensional model of a building and saying, well, where does the pool fit on the roof deck? And the architect lifts off the roof and turns the whole thing sideways and shows you the depth of the pool. And you can literally put your finger in it and move it and pull it apart and say, well, we'd like the pool to be a little deeper. All right, well, let's talk about that. And we literally could pull that piece of the element, reshape all these things that are currently being done on two-dimensional engineering will now be three-dimensional.
Here's what I don't understand about that. Most of it, but in that circumstance where I'm looking at the pool, and why do I need the translucent nature? Isn't that I'm sitting in my office, and if I'm looking straight ahead, it's the cubicle wall or the people walking around or the picture I have on my on my desk or whatever. Why wouldn't, under that circumstance, I want it to be opaque so I can just focus on the pool?
Because the likelihood is that your door will open, your phone will ring, other things will happen in the world around you, and you don't want to be cut off. Part of what I think the difference between augmented reality and virtual reality is, augmented reality is taking elements, and we'll show you when we show you the clip, almost easier to show than to tell, but you'll be, able to see how these virtual elements interact with the real world.
Well, and I think you have another example where, in some of the augmented reality stuff that you see on the iPhone, where you just hold up the phone and look through the camera where it superimposes stuff,
yes,
is based on the idea that you want something from where you are and something from the computer mixed together.
By the way, here's the trick of the show that we have today. Describing AR and VR is inherently unfulfilling. Watching people demo it is moderately better. Doing it yourself is really awesome.
Okay, so let us go watch the video that you did from Meta. Just set up what we're going to be seeing. What are you doing in this?
So I reached out to the folks from Meta and said, hey, I'm going to be at TED. I'd like to get a demo. They didn't actually they had one station set up for 2,000 people, so they weren't going to get everybody through it. I got there early. The CEO actually did the demo with me, and as a result, you'll see the CEO in an interview that I did. And it is the first time that I've understood augmented reality and the potential power of it if it comes to fruition. So with that, here's 3.5 minutes of TED on the floor. I'm on the floor here at TED in Vancouver, and the vibe is fascinating. Everybody is interested in talking about augmented reality on stage, at the coffee shops. Basically, the conversation is, what does it mean and what's it going to do? Well, I'm getting a demo of the Meta glasses. They've been the talk of the show. They haven't been on stage yet. And we're going to see what they really are about. So here they are.
Chapter 1. Again, the name of the game here is Immersion Resolution and All-Around Badassness.
Okay.
You pumped?
I am ready to be badassed.
Okay, good.
Is that really
Badassiosity, I think, is the right word.
I'm a neuroscientist. I that's my background. That's what I care about. I mean, my whole motivation for building this company is to build computing that is an order of magnitude easier to use than an Apple device.
That's good, and we'll just tighten it up in the back and tighten the top strap to support you a little bit.
All right.
And everything else is noise. So when when we're talking about competitors and all this stuff, like, I'm here to merge the field of neuroscience with the field of user experience and build the iOS of the mind. And I think that's something that that is simply the truth.
So we're looking at holograms, man. You ready for it?
I am.
You could lower your hand. That was calibration. Let's get started with our demo. Look, it's stuck to the desk. You can come ahead and explore.
Do you worry that you're going to be the leader with arrows in your back and you're going to show people this vision and then somebody's going to...
I don't care. I mean, all I care about is fucking putting these holograms out in the world and making them the most natural and intuitive interface that anyone can build.
Keep moving.
I thought I was going to be unstable, but I don't feel unstable at all.
So that's because we have a neuroscience department at Meta that's making sure that stability is, and we're not going to get sick and so forth. Go ahead and poke this ball. like a balloon, and now pull your hand out, and you're gonna see it bouncing on the real world.
It's going to be the biggest industry in computing ever. And that means that there's room for a bazillion players. And I actually want Magic Leap and Oculus to succeed, because if Magic Leap fails with all of this hype and, and all of this attention on them, that's really going to be a pretty bad thing for the rest of us.
This is the first time in history, Steven, we're merging the digital and the real world.
Wow.
Let's continue forward. Raise your index finger.
Great.
Index finger upright. Go ahead and poke one of those balls. And this is the only system that allows you to touch the holograms directly.
Yeah, it's fucking great.
Let's keep going. Perfect. Now we're gonna learn how to grab. Can you open your hand like so and just put it inside of the hologram that's about to emerge in just a second? You can open your hand nice and wide, put it in there, make a fist slowly, and move your hand around nice and slow, and you're officially Iron Man. It's that easy to use our system. And then if you just open your hand and pull it quickly out, it stays in place. And let's keep moving. You just got your Iron Man certification.
That's fucking great.
It's an experience. I think you're going to hear that term a lot in the various brotherhood of AR VR companies. And what we're very passionate about is actually building a workspace that's very custom to each and every one of us. I mean, imagine your dream digital workshop. That's what we're building, right? You get your Iron Man basement of your thoughts. And so that means, yes, you could put a Netflix on the wall and make it huge and enjoy that and stare, in a holographic 3D, but then you can go and invent the next interface of computing over here with the hologram, and maybe edit your journalism over here in 10 panels, and then just swipe it all away and get back into the moment, the moment someone comes in, and we can interact with each other.
All right, so I am just out of the Meta demo, which you got to see, and I can just tell you, it's really, really fucking awesome. It's everything that they promised it would be. Scoble was right. It's engaging. It's fun. It's dynamic. I'm really, really thrilled and excited for you guys to play with it and for it to get out in the world. And it's going to be a really, really, really big deal. It's fucking awesome. So,
I need to know what were you doing all those times you were sort of moaning.
There are things floating in front of you, and again, part of what makes it so exciting is, like, they're interacting with you in this very, if you push things, they fly. If you poke things, they squeeze. Like maybe we'll take this for granted in 10 years, but right now, the idea that I'm not wearing super gloves, but I'm literally just moving my fingers in the air, and it's impacting, 3D models, a whole set of skeletons. You can imagine it from an anyway. We don't need. Let's not preach the gospel of Meta, except to say it's a really good thing. I'm glad I did it. I think it's going to impact our hacking TV world.
Okay, and now we're going to go compare and contrast to some of the other demos they saw. One that I guess did not really go over as well was the other augmented reality company, Microsoft's HoloLens. So what did they show you, and what do you make of it?
I still don't know why it didn't go over as well. I mean, they showed really cool stuff.
Real cool? So just explain what it is.
They had a guy in a hologram of an astronaut walking on the stage and interacting with the presenter. But it, for reasons I can't put my finger on, it just felt a little prepackaged, a little like it wasn't going to behave that way. If it was like I feel like if he left me with HoloLens, or I'm sorry, with Meta, it would do what he was showing me without him guiding me through it. Mm-hmm. And I think the feeling, so after the Microsoft HoloLens demo, the host asked the presenter a question, said, some people are concerned that really isn't what it feels like when you're wearing the device, and he gave this very weird, not very responsive answer and said, well, I've heard that question before, but I'm not going to answer that.
Did they have any for people to try on?
Nope.
That's interesting. And philosophically, assuming, let's just say their engineering isn't quite done yet, but if they can build what they showed off that they were trying to build, how is it different than Meta. What is this thing designed to do if it works?
I'm not sure that in the technology it's dramatically different, but I think that one of the kind of differentiators is the next phase of AR entertainment, or is it really business use? Is it really doctors being able to look at X-rays in 3D and teachers being able to show their class, 3D models of things? I think the Meta guys see it as much more an information technology. And I think the Microsoft guys, see it as more of an entertainment technology.
Is this being done in another Xbox group?
No, HoloLens is its own group.
And I mean, the interesting thing or one of the interesting things from the Meta guy is he talked about you're doing your word processing. I mean, he sees this as the replacement for the mouse and the touchscreen.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Which is interesting. Then there were two more companies that were showing stuff in the virtual reality, the opaque world, rather than the translucent world. And one of them, Verse, is a little bit different. What did Verse have to show?
So Verse is much more, narrative storytelling. They've been working closely with the New York Times. They were the team that did the New York Times VR experience that came in that Google Cardboard that was
shipped. Do they make hardware, or are they just a production company?
Just a production company.
Okay.
And so they handed out 2,000 pieces of Google Cardboard to everyone in the room, and everyone downloaded a piece of software, and everyone held these things up, and 2,000 people was the largest single, gathering of people doing VR together. And, the thing is, after I'd already seen everything that First showed, so it wasn't it didn't blow me away. But for the people on either side of me, it was orgasmic.
And I'm sort of thinking about the sort of, science fiction spy movie thing where you have 2,000 of the most rich and influential people in the world putting on a device and having their brains reprogrammed simultaneously for some evil scheme. But
there's a little James Bond in there, yes.
But and if you start walking around and doing strange things that make more money for Rupert Murdoch, we'll understand why. But what did he say? So they're talking about production. What did they say about what was interesting about production? Did you get any insights that, these guys have now actually made a bunch of these things, and presumably they tried things and some worked and some didn't. What insights did they offer?
It's super early days. So
yep.
Chris Milk, who's the head of Verse and who's clearly one of the leaders in the space, was really honest. He said, we're still trying to figure out people not feeling uncomfortable, the camera movement, how we can take people through. If the camera moves too dramatically through the space, it's very off-putting. It makes you feel uncomfortable. I actually brought a 360 video camera with me to TED and shot video on the floor in 360 degree and posted it on Facebook. I will try and get my YouTube embed of my TED experience in 360 posted on our hackingtv.waywire.com. I think that will work.
And we'll put if we get that up there, we'll put links to it on hackingtv.news, the show blog.
Yeah. But let me talk about the one that was the most surprising.
Okay.
So Meta wins hands down as the, if they get enough developers to jump into their platform, it could be, a rocket ship. But there was this thing called the Void. And no one knew what it was. There had been very little press in advance. You walked into this room, you put on what felt like almost a bulletproof vest that had a computer on the back, and then you put on a VR helmet, but it had a camera, and if you held your hands up in front of it, you saw your hands as virtual objects. So it was recording the physical world and then turning it into digital objects. They asked me if I had any concerns, and I said no, and they said, all right, well, here you go. And then this pedestal rose up in front of me with a glowing hand on it. And I touched the hand. This is like straight out of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Right.
And the door goes, shoo, and you
Now this was actually a real, not a virtual
Yeah.
hand. Pedestal is a real hand.
yeah, well, hard to know what's real and what's virtual.
If you didn't have the glasses on, what would you have seen?
My guess is I would have seen a cardboard or wooden pedestal with nothing on it, just like kind of a block.
And when
But
you
they-
felt it, then you actually felt something with your actual nerve endings.
Oh yeah, no. What they've done is what they've done that's brilliant is that they've mixed together virtual and physical.
Okay.
So you walk into the space, the door closes, you touch the walls are cold to the touch. They say in your ears you hear, "Go and pick up the torch," and there's a torch flaming on the wall, and you walk up to it and you grab it, and it's physical, and you lift it off the wall, and you're now holding this object with a torch burning in front of you. So I mean, I guess if it were in real life, what I would see is a metal rod with nothing at the top. But they've figured out how to take digital objects and layer them on top of the physical world, so that as you move the torch around, it goes, so you feel like you're brandishing this torch.
Now, you do the first thing I would have done is run my hand through the flame to see what that felt. Did you do that?
I didn't,
Okay.
because that would have been scary, and
Okay.
and I assume it would have not felt hot.
But you never know, right? I suppose.
But then we walked into the next room and pushed a button or touched something, and the floor dropped away, and we were in this massive ocean off the edge of a cliff with water just roiling, and the water was splashing, and I could feel the cold water on my face, and it was cold air blowing off the water, and there was this sound, and the floor started to shake, and this massive serpent came up out of the water and attacked me. And it was just bloody scary.
Wait, no, so which parts were real? The real serpent, but it wasn't cold, or real cold and fake serpent? What?
Nope, serpent was digital.
Okay.
Water was fake. Cold
So you- yeah.
air was real, and sprinkling moisture was real.
So they did. Okay. So all right. So there was, you know, a little bit of reality for the senses.
So the word that they use is haptic sense, and it means digital things that give you little physical sensations. But they figured out just the things that make, like if the floor tipped dramatically to the right or left so that I felt like I lost my balance, that would not have been cool,
Okay.
and I would have not liked that. So they tested just how much physicality they can to kind of make the digital feel real. It was just, I mean, it was very intense.
And what did they say they were going to do with this? It sounds like there's a lot of very smart science in this.
So they've currently they're from I want to say Ohio, but I don't think that's right actually. They're from where are the Mormons from?
Utah.
They're from Utah. I knew there was a H and a yeah. They're from Utah. They have one physical lab built that you can
Right.
go and book time to visit, and they're they're putting people through it. My guess is you'll see it at amusement parks quickly, and then you'll see it maybe at storefront VR amusement, kind of like video game parlors. But like you can't have it in your living room. You have to build a physical space to get the haptic stuff right. And the question is, if you've got 3 or 4 different stories, which they have running now in Utah, how much of the moving wall or pedestal or water, can be repurposed for different stories.
It's interesting. You can certainly see, the Army using this to train Navy SEALs and that sort of thing. And perfectly good amusement park ride. I actually think that blending that with the first thing may be more likely than you would think. I mean, take out, the smell-o-vision and the squirting water. I just wonder whether most of the time people would rather have opaque than translucent. This hologram thing, maybe it's just me, but I find it annoying. I mean, it's one of the reasons why holograms never took off, perhaps, is you don't want stuff to be translucent. It's so I'd much rather be able to have like a switch, and I'm fully in whatever virtual world I want, and if I need to use my hands the camera draws my hand so I can go touch the thing. And then if my daughter walks into the room, I hit the switch and either it becomes clear or the camera turns on to real world or something.
So here's the way I would look at it.
Yep.
Remember the first black and white movies where the train came driving down the track and the people in the theater got scared and ran away because they thought the train was going to hit them? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So look, nobody could have known then that we were going to have what we have now in IMAX or theaters or television or all these things that have evolved since then. So I think to me, the thing I came away from Ted feeling, and then we'll talk about some other things. We have a few minutes left. Where it's going, I think, is anybody's guess. I think people are going to test all kinds of things. I think different generations are going to be more comfortable with different things. But as a toolbox, as a playpen, God, there's like a lot of really interesting learnings to do.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. If you think about what technology do they need to use to do these things, right? The very fast image processing and the calculations and, the display technologies, right? So if you separated each of those things out and said, does some combination of these things solve a whole bunch of problems? Absolutely. You talk about IMAX, right? There is a 50-year gap between Cinerama and IMAX,
yep.
Right? So Cinerama, for people who aren't as old as we are, was 3 movie screens next to each other. So they gave you like a not quite 180-degree view, but not quite as tall as an IMAX. And they shot like 10 movies in it. And it wasn't worth the bother. And it died until science museums figured that they could charge a lot of money or something. Anyway, it came back.
So let's move on to other hackable TV stories in the few minutes we have left.
All right.
So Yahoo is out of the content business,
with an interesting exception, right? So Yahoo is basically on the auction block. The stuff that Marissa tried to do isn't working. She tried all these digital magazines, hired David Pogue to do tech, blah, blah, blah. And then the person running all that, Kathy Savitt, goes and leaves. They hire somebody else, and they're getting rid of most of the things, including something called Yahoo Originals. And so the guy who was running that, Ian Moffat, who had done a bunch of shows just like everybody else, right? Community, Resurrection and some other things. He's out because it's not making any money and nobody talks about Yahoo for some reason the way they talk about Hulu and Netflix and so on. And the only question is Katie Couric, and her $10 million a year is still kicking around, and what's going to happen to her? They say right now she's still there. But what do you make of all this?
I think that the valley between old media and new media is deeper and longer than any of us knew it was going to be. And I think, for all of Yahoo's attempts to be in the content business, I don't think there has been a time when I've gone home at the end of a long day and said, boy, I really want to kick my shoes off and put them up on the couch and watch some Yahoo. I mean, they just never, Hulu clearly is a television offering, as is Netflix, as is HBO, as is Amazon Prime. Where AOL / Huffington Post ends up in all this, they seem to be getting better traction on the video space, but they own some more tech and they did a bunch of things right. And, the rumor mill is they may buy Yahoo, which would be ironic on all kinds of levels.
Tim's wanted to buy Yahoo or merge with Yahoo since he started there. It makes a lot of sense, in some sense, to, double down on that sort of thing. But, I'm not sure it's old media and new media. It's brands that stand for something versus brands that don't stand for anything, right? Is Hulu old media or new media? Is Netflix? What they were was a focused proposition, and they got to stand for something by reruns, right? So there were great places to watch old shows or shows that were, on some other network, and that creates the carrier frequency that they can start putting the new stuff into. So they didn't have to sort of launch with an entire, array of new things. Even HBO still has some movies on it, even though that's not sort of their main claim to fame anymore. But they started that way. Yahoo, who the hell,
Yeah. So last story, just because I don't understand it and you do, what is this AT&T taking on, taking Uverse out of its offering?
Right.
What is it?
AT&T, and their main TV offering until the moment that they brought DirecTV, something called Uverse, right? You could compare it to Fios, but the key difference is in the Northeast, old cities were built with telephone poles, and in the Southwest, where AT&T does business, new cities were built where the phone lines were buried in the yard and ran to people's houses. So the cost for Verizon to run fiber optics to people's houses was, $1,000 a house or something expensive, but much less than digging up the hedges and re-putting it in. So AT&T couldn't afford to do fiber to the home. So they pushed DSL, DSL being data over your old copper phone wires. And they did as many things as you could to get enough bandwidth into your house to get a TV signal. And they bought a fancy set-top box made by Microsoft. And they sold a bunch of people, TV packages that included TV, phone, and internet. But it was always clunky. And they're saying it was clunky, and because they didn't have the size, they paid more money than they should have for the video contracts, more per sub, so they were losing money, apparently. So now they're moving to an even older technology, which is direct satellite, and they're saying to anybody who wants to sign up for a triple pay package, just get your internet over the DSL line and get your TV from space. And it seems weird to me, but it's what they're doing.
I think it's part of this rapid evolution. We're out of time, so I'm going to say hack on, and we will be back next week to continue to hack on TV.
All right. Well, next week you can count on more hacking TV reality. So keep on hacking. Have a great week, Steve.
You too, Saul.